My name is Steve Englishbey, and I do work as a hitting instructor, and I've worked as a hitting instructor since really 2001. I have my own website that I started in 2006, EnglishbeyHiitting.com, oddly enough, is the name. And I'm also a relatively latecomer to the idea of kind of using social media. I'm kind of an old school guy. I've kind of variously rebelled against various kinds of new technology. Still have a little AT&T phone. I don't have a smartphone yet. I'm probably not smart enough to have one. But I did want to kind of think about getting the word out a little bit better as to who I am. So that's kind of why I'm here. I've started this, what's going to be a YouTube channel, EnglishbeyHiitting. I'm going to put up things that I think are interesting, things that I think are relevant as regards either teaching hitting or the mechanics of hitting, as I say sometimes the physiology and biomechanics of, involved in learning how to swing a bat really well. So I'm going to talk about any of the things that have to do with either instruction or swinging bat. And of course, along the way as being an instructor, I do have some information that I've sold. I have 2 DVDs out now that basically is an explanation of what elite level hitters are doing, how they function, some of the things that I think are essential to swinging at an elite level, what's involved. I'm showing that in 2 DVDs. I'm using my swings to actually show this. How can I pull that off? As a 50-plus guy swinging the bat, how can I make a claim that I can swing like a Barry Bonds or Manny Ramirez? Well, to some extent, I'm in a somewhat unique position to maybe try to pull that off. I do have a background in sports. I played football in high school, had about 30 scholarship offers to play football. I was a high school All-American baseball player, first round draft choice with the Astros, 9th person in the nation chosen that year, and went on to play with the Astros organization, got as high as AAA. I'm also somewhat of an exercise freak, I suppose you could say. I spent a lot of time doing exercises. I try to practice what I preach. I've worked as a trainer with athletes, so anything and everything that I would ask athletes to do, I've done it many times in the context of things having to do with specific exercises about swinging and throwing. I've done them hundreds, if not thousands of times. I actually started lifting weights when I was 9 on recommendation from an orthopedic, not an orthopedic doctor, but a doctor, children's doctor, I forget the name. At any rate, she was a woman. She recommended that I start lifting weights because I had asthma. So not that I've lifted 3 times a week since I've been 9 years old, but it certainly started then. And that's, I've been a guy that's, basically, as I said, got an exercise bias. I think all athletes should, variously train. If whatever sport you're in, you need to be getting stronger, quicker, bigger, and, exercise is a way to do that. So what I've done over the years is I've stayed in relatively good shape. And when I started thinking about doing the DVD, I went out and swung back quite a bit over a period of 4 years, and out of that emerged these 2 DVDs. So I just want to talk about that briefly a little bit. I also wanted to mention that something that's fairly relevant to my experience. Played professional baseball, worked as a trainer. I also worked as a researcher, librarian type for the local bureau here in Houston of Newsweek magazine in the 90s for about 4 years. Why is that relevant in this context? Well, that's where I really developed capacity to wade through all kinds of information. It was my job to read 6, 8, 10 hours a day trying to find information. This was actually before the internet probably the internet was around. We didn't have it at our office. But the fact is, this is relevant to what I do now, because when I got back into baseball after a long absence, I've been out of it for well over 15 years, got back into it, and like everybody else, I kind of said, you know, what do I need to know? I kind of had a thought about being a hitting instructor, and I basically said, well, just because I could swing bat reasonably well doesn't mean I know how to teach or really understand the swing. So like with most other people interested in understanding the swing, I started in on finding as much information as I possibly could. Spent an enormous amount of time over the last 15 years trying to find good information. Lots of different sources. I think that, you know, there's been a number of influences that were highly influential. Mentioned three, Mel Siff, I mentioned in a prior, or I'll talk about Mel. I've talked about him many times on the website. Great sports scientist. Certainly his book Super Training, his website Super Training, instrumental in getting me to think about not so much what to train or what specific things to train, but how to think about training in general, whatever the athlete. Mel had tremendous depth and wisdom, intelligence, and certainly a guy that early on, in 1995 or so, 2000, in that time period, kind of ran across Mel Siff's books, information, and so forth. Paul Leiner's Set Pro, that was a website that I initially ran across. It was run by a guy named Paul Leiner, the engineer background. Applied his engineering kind of understanding to understanding how to throw and swing, throw a ball and swing it back. Tremendous influence on me, and that he was thinking along very similar lines. I should say I was thinking along very similar lines when I ran across him. Basically, he had a post where he was talking about the difference between cues and reality. And what I teach is all about reality. It's not about cues. That website was highly influential on how I learned to think about the swing. And certainly, you know, I've tried to take from that website and apply that information, add to it in terms of teaching methods and so forth. Lastly, I mentioned Jim Dixon. Jim Dixon was a photographer by trade, wrote a book called The Exceptional Player. It's a small book about elite level throwers and hitters. He was not a biomechanic guy, but the fact is he was very very sharp in terms of seeing things. And when I first ran across this book, as with Paul Nyman, when he first ran across it, he thought he was a biomechanic guy, and very impressed with the information. Bottom line is, it was in looking at Jim's stuff, it certainly reinforced and shed light on how elite players are actually moving. So I mentioned these three as very, very important to me, kind of understanding, you know, how to think about swinging, how to think about throwing. No question about that. Lastly, I would simply say that, you know, the reason why I got back into this is because, you know, two reasons why I wrote it. Number one, I'm kind of a natural, by all indications, kind of a natural teacher. Been told that over the years many times before I got into this, and I finally decided I should do it. I was basically kind of compelled to do it, I think. And compelled because it's subject matter that's always interested me, the meaning, you know, kind of understanding how athletes move, how you develop better movement, and so forth. That's something that's had a long time interest in that. And it's my nature, kind of somewhat obsessive compulsive nature, to find subject matter that I can really delve into legally, and this understanding how to teach, understanding how to help people develop how to swing back. This is something that I knew that I needed to do, and it was, you know, it was something that I could be obsessive compulsive about in terms of understanding every aspect of, you know, how to understand the swing, or how to understand how to develop a swing, or how to understand how to teach a swing. So that's just a little bit of my background. In the future, I'll be talking about various aspects of the swing, but I just want to somewhat introduce myself today, and hope this sheds a little bit of insight on who I am and where